On this week's episode of the EV Resource Podcast, we're going to do things a bit differently. I had the opportunity to be a guest on Real Talk with Joe Malizia, where Joe and I talk about busting some of the most common myths about electric vehicles. Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the EV Resource Podcast. My name is Zach Hurst, and each week I bring you the latest EV news, information, and answers to your questions about electric vehicles. This week, we are doing things a little differently. We're going to focus on the last bit of that. I recently had the opportunity to be on the Real Talk show with Joe Malizia, and we tackled some tough questions about EVs and dispelled a lot of the common myths that are associated with electric vehicles. So I wanted to bring that conversation to you. For the EV pros out there, you might not get a whole lot out of it, but I will encourage you to share it with people that might not be as exposed to EVs as the rest of us. Before we get into it, as always, I want to thank Titan Auto and Tire in Moseley, Virginia for their support for this podcast. Without them, I would not be able to keep going the way we have been. Titan is one of the very few shops in Virginia that are qualified to work on EVs and hybrids, and from hybrids to Hummers, they fix everything. So here you go, guys. I hope you enjoy it. Real Talk with Joe Malizia.
Hey everyone, Joe Malizia here with Real Talk. I have my good friend Zach Hurst on the line. And Zach, thank you so much for joining this conversation. Friends, we are in for such a treat tonight. We are mixing it up a little bit and talking about some technology that we're all familiar with, but probably know very little about. And that's where Zach comes in. So Zach is gracious enough to bust some myths about electric vehicles, man. Zach, why should this matter? Why should people care? I mean, what makes you care so much about technology that involves transportation that we all use, but aren't familiar with? I mean, yeah.
Sure.
Why does it matter, man?
Well, and that was a question that I actually struggled with a lot for myself. Because back when all of this started for me, which is roughly a year ago, a little bit more.
Yeah.
I have always been interested in EVs because of the technology. I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, whatever you want to say. It's just the technology is better, it's more efficient. That's what grabbed me. Also because in terms of the immediate response when you step on this pedal, that kind of thing. My big moment was, my first big moment, I test drove locally at the dealership here, a Tesla Model S. And that really was when my life was changed, because I realized, wow, there's something to this. And that was actually a number of years ago. And then I guess it's been about 2 years now, maybe 2.5. I test drove the Model 3 Performance. So that's their smaller sedan that's kind of more for the mass market. And the Performance model does 0 to 60, and at that point 3.4. They've actually made it a little bit faster now. And that, I say, was the day that my life was ruined. And the reason for that is because, and I can barely distinctly remember it, every single day after that point of that, just a test drive, I didn't want any other feeling. I wanted an EV from that point forward, like no ifs, ands, or buts, no question about it. So for me, it was all about the experience of driving. Honestly, it had nothing to do with like saving the planet and the environment, or even, cleaner air and, tree hugging and all of that. Now, that being said, the fact that they're cool just wasn't a big enough reason for me. It wasn't a big enough why, for me to start EV Resource and really want to educate people about how amazing electric vehicles are. The fact that they're cool just wasn't enough. So over the last year and a little bit, I really have tried to push myself to say, okay, well, what is important for everybody? And there are a lot of people that say, well, EVs are better for the environment. I don't know if that's one of the myths that we're actually going to cover, but they actually are. And from, the manufacturing and the mining, all of it, even if they're coal powered, they are better for the environment. That's been proven a number of times now.
Yeah. Well, honestly, keep going into that.
That is one of the ones.
That is one of the ones we were going to talk about. I'm so glad it's like you did this before.
Oh, go figure. Well, and all of these myths really are going to be reasons why people should want to drive EVs, because the reason that they are myths, the reason that that is information that's put out there is because people who don't want to see the world transition to electric vehicles are putting the misinformation out there. It's something that we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You know, you put that into people's minds, and I see it all the time. People are like, oh, you know, EVs might be able to do this, but they can't do this. And that's why we should hate all of them because of that one little itty bitty thing.
Right.
You know, to answer the original question, the reason that people should want an EV could be numerous. It could be because it saves you money on maintenance and you don't have to worry about fuel costs. Electricity costs a lot less than gasoline. It could be that economic argument. It could be the environmental argument. I mean, I'm not going to tell people why they should like an EV or want to have an electric vehicle for themselves. I will always tell them why I did it and what the other reasons are. But yeah, so to get to EVs aren't better for the environment. They really are. A lot of the argument against it is outdated information, multifaceted. One, the long tailpipe argument. People say, well, because your electricity that is used to run the car is basically taken from coal power, well, you're polluting far over there instead of, you know, where you are driving. That is true. People are going to be polluting when the energy that they're getting is coal powered, but it's still more environmentally conscious, even when an EV is charged off of a grid that is dirty. And that grid is getting cleaner all the time. More and more, we're transitioning away from coal power to, I hesitate to say clean natural gas, but even solar, wind, bio, tidal systems in some parts of the world. They use the tidal currents to generate electricity. And nuclear is one of my favorite that everybody goes, nuclear is safe. Nuclear is actually really clean. It's really great for the environment. You can take all of the nuclear waste throughout all of history, the last 60 whatever years. Actually, it's probably like closer to 80 years now. It fits into 3 football fields. Like all of the nuclear waste can fit into 3 football fields. So the grid is getting much, much cleaner. Yeah. The other argument from an environmental standpoint is all the mining of the rare minerals. Well, lithium is actually something that is very, very abundant. People don't realize that. Cobalt is the one that a lot of people stick on, and then they typically will go to this picture of a cobalt mine back in 2004, I think it was, with this young kid that was being forced to you know, almost slave labor. You can't look at the history of any technology and find it to be spotless. You know, everything is going to have its marks. I mean, people have died creating gasoline and oil. You know, bad things happen. And I'm not saying that to dismiss it, but that's one example. Nowadays, a lot of the companies are limiting or even eliminating the amount of cobalt that's in the batteries. Most EV batteries use less than 4%. So it's not really one of those minerals that a lot of people are, that's the one that they focus on, but it really is. There's more cobalt per percentage in our phone batteries, like than there is in an electric car.
Wow. So would you say then, in terms of overall grand scheme of picture, like it's safe to say EVs are better for the environment compared to gas-powered vehicles?
Yes, and that's not just my opinion. You know, there have been a number of studies that have been proving that. Actually, for a few years, it's just nobody wants to listen to that. They want to listen to what gets people aggravated and riled up.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely, hands down, it's not even a question anymore.
I mean, how about I mean, honestly, man, one of the things that comes to my mind is like just the practicalness, like the range. I mean, we just drove from Pennsylvania to here. Really, we didn't need to stop at all. Our sweet Toyota Sienna, you know.
Great van, man.
Right. It's very spacious. It fits everybody. It's great. Right. Like, but obviously with a battery vehicle, it couldn't maybe potentially not have that range. True, not true. That's something I've heard, the range being an issue or it's not really feasible.
Sure. Well, most people are going to use an example like you just did to
Mm-hmm.
say why you should not have an EV.
Right.
My response to that, and I'll address that directly in a second, but
Yeah.
my first response is really, how often are you taking those longer road trips?
Mm-hmm.
Are you choosing the vehicle that you drive based on an occurrence that happens maybe 2 or 3 times a year? And then the other 350 days of the year, or 300 days of the year,
Right.
we'll keep it a round number. You're driving something that's actually worse for your own situation
Mm.
that could be, improved by having an electric vehicle. The average amount of miles that people drive in the US on a daily basis is 39 miles. Do you really need something that does more than 100 miles a day?
Right. Right.
Most people don't. Now, the older EVs, especially like the one I have a Chevy Spark EV. I got it used for $11,000. It's got a range of 82 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't bought gas in over a year. If we want to go on a longer road trip, we take my wife's car. I've
Right.
still got my old Civic sitting in the backyard that I actually haven't driven in 16 months now. I thought I would need it, so I kept it, and now the only reason I'm keeping it, so I'm going to convert it to electric. It's going to be my project car. But
That's awesome.
Right now, the average range of a new EV is over 200 miles easily. And if you, let's say, go 100, 150 miles, well, if you're doing 60 miles an hour on average, okay, that's 2.5 hours. Well, my argument and the question I would pose is it really a problem to stop for a half hour, 45 minutes or so if you've just driven for 2.5 hours? Like,
Right.
there's a safety aspect to it, especially if you've got kids. Like, they need to get
Yes. Bathroom breaks are real.
break.
Yeah.
So no, the twist on your question is they can't recharge or refuel in but a lot of newer EV, the Teslas that are charging extremely quickly, you can get a couple hundred miles in 15 to 20 minutes plugged in. You don't have to plug in all the way to full.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a matter of making sure that you know where you're going and how far it is and plan accordingly. If you're going 400 miles, well, okay, drive 200, recharge, and then drive the other 200. Well, if you've got a car that can do 300 miles or so, then you don't need to charge it all the way to full. You can plug in wherever your destination is.
Yeah.
So EVs can absolutely travel long distances. Even EV bikes. There was just an article this week I actually posted on the Facebook page. A guy traveled from the Mexican border all the way up to the Canadian border, traveling the West Coast on a Harley Livewire motorcycle, full electric motorcycle. People do cross country, multiple 1,000-mile trips in Teslas. They've done that in the Chevy Bolt and the Hyundai Kona. I mean, a lot of the new EVs, people are actually taking them on long distance trips. Some of them, if just to prove that it can be done.
Wow.
So my car, absolutely not.
Sure.
It's a short range city car, but it's very amazingly perfect for the use case that I don't drive all that much. And honestly, when I do, I just plug it in. My car can recharge completely in about 35 minutes, and then I'm just running around again. So
yeah,
it's no big deal.
Dang. And honestly, I think the one thing it's really encouraging to hear that it seems like the charging stations they're just multiplying.
Too. Oh yeah.
So like the availability, I mean, we could make it up that I've heard it. Where do you plug these things in? There's options.
The biggest issue there is people don't see them.
Right.
You see the gas station on the corner. People see Tesla supercharger stations because they're positioned around where people normally are.
Right.
Everywhere I charge my car, people are like, "Oh, I didn't know there was a charger over there." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's the third floor of the parking deck behind AC and short pump. Like, you're not gonna know it's there unless you know it's there."
Right.
And to that point, there's apps that you can download that will tell you, like PlugShare is a good one. They'll tell you everywhere there is a charger that works specifically with your car. And a lot of the newer cars are actually coming with that kind of feature built into it. The Ford Mustang SUV crossover full electric, the Mach-E, is going to have a feature in there where it'll tell you even third-party charging stations where they are. So that's going to be something that you don't even have to really think about. You'll just put your destination in the navigation, and the cars are starting to tell you where you will need to charge and when. You don't even have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
It's cool. It's cool, and it's changing because people don't realize how rapidly all this is changing. It's technology, it's software.
Right.
These are, yes, they're cars, but they're not cars. They're computers on wheels.
Yeah.
And as fast as software and technology changes, the cars are changing.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, honestly, with that, I mean, is this affordable? Because this technology is, I mean, completely being revamped by the day. I mean, all the people that I know that have these vehicles are constantly getting their software updates. And it's like, how can this be? That brings the question of cost, right?
Sure.
Like, this has to be something that, I mean, I've heard before, like, I'll never have an electric vehicle because it's just too expensive. And I've heard, obviously Tesla is the one that everybody's most, familiar with from like a
in this country
standpoint.
Yeah, Tesla is synonymous with electric vehicle in this country. And that's good, but it's also bad. Tesla's certainly leading the pack in almost every possible way, but the cars themselves, I mean, 10 years ago when they had the Roadster, it was a $150,000 car. And it was a 2-seater convertible. I mean, that was literally a toy for rich people. Then they came out with the Model S in 2012, and that was, a little bit more than 100. Well, not only are they dropping the price of those vehicles, the Model S now starts less than 70, when originally it was much more than 100 grand. The Model X, which is the bigger SUV, also did. Well, their plan was to make inexpensive EVs basically a mass market that more people can have a way to afford it. So the Model 3, actually right now, the standard range plus Model 3 is $37,990. That sticker price is what people focus on. They don't realize that the cost of owning an EV month after month after month, you might be able to get the Model 3 for, let's say, $550 or $600 a month payment. Well, you don't really have any maintenance to worry about. You don't have oil changes or timing belts or serpentine belts or water pumps or spark plugs or air filters or any of that. So you don't have that cost. You also don't have fuel costs, whatever people are spending on gas every month. So when you add all those other costs up, like, for example, my wife, she drives a Volkswagen GTI premium gas. She spends close to $850 a month on the car payment, the gas, the maintenance. Well, we're going to get a Tesla Model 3 and replace her GTI, or at least her using it. She's going to keep the car because it's her dream car. But the Model 3 Tesla, $40,000 car. I've never spent that much money in my entire life. The thought of that just drives me nuts.
Right.
But it's not the total, like the price. It's the total cost of ownership. Over 5 years, we'll end up saving close to $10,000 because we made that choice. Now, to get to the other EVs, you can buy other new EVs like the Nissan Leaf or the Hyundai Kona or the Chevy Bolt at massive discounts for under $30,000. And then the used EV market, I mentioned I got my car a year ago for $11,000. The car payment is less than what I was spending on gas.
Sure.
It's not a matter of being able to afford it. This car is free. Like, free. But I mean, it saves me $50 a month every month that I'm driving that car and the Civic is parked in the backyard.
Jeez.
So it's the economic factor. It depends on what people consider to be affordable. But honestly, I was having this conversation with a colleague at Cars and Coffee. EVs are honestly slated, the used ones, for the people that are having the hardest economic trouble. If you need reliable transportation to get you to and from work so you can keep your job, because if you miss a day, you're fired or whatever. If you need reliable transportation, there isn't anything more reliable than an electric vehicle. So if you go out and buy a used EV to get you to and from work, that is almost better for the people that can afford maybe $5,000 to $10,000 car, you can get old original Nissan Leafs for $5,000. You can get the Fiat 500 or even the smart car electric, which is not necessarily the smartest decision, but it's there. Or the Spark EV out west, like in the Midwest or even California. I have seen people selling my car with about the same mileage for like $6,000-$7,000. So you're at that point, you're talking what, $150 a month car payment?
Right.
I'm not going to tell anybody if that's affordable or not, but I
Sure.
would expect that the majority of people would, hands down, it's absolutely something that they could afford.
Yeah. Would that be something?
There are expensive EVs and there are cheap ones. I mean, it just depends on what you're going for. You know, is everybody going to be able to afford the $2.1 million Lotus Avaya EV hypercar? No, but you know, the people that do are going to enjoy being able to do 0 to 186 miles an hour in 9 seconds.
Just for funsies.
Yeah. You know, and I know this is one on our list, so let's just go to it. The transition right there. EVs are not golf carts. They're not glorified golf carts. They're not slow. The fastest accelerating vehicle that's mass produced right now in the world is electric, and that's the Tesla Model S Performance with ludicrous 0 to 60 in 2.2. I've experienced that. And
did you have a neck injury? I mean, honestly.
No, but they tell you actually to put your head back against the headrest before you launch because of that. I mean, it's dead serious. It's like how they prepare you to be on a roller coaster. It's crazy.
That's awesome. The thing that's you know, from this even the speed standpoint, I mean, what is the charging? I want to go back a little bit real quick here to the cost of the electricity to power these bad boys. I see like the long-term value of the vehicle's payments is definitely cheaper. That's awesome. But is the electricity to charge these batteries, does that offset the cost of owning one of these bad boys during the long term?
In of itself, no, but combined with the savings on maintenance, yeah, absolutely. Electricity obviously costs a different amount depending on where you are. You know, most people are going to charge their EVs at home.
Yeah.
And so like here, like I'm paying about 12 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a unit of electricity. My battery can handle a total right now. I can use about 14 kilowatt hours. So if I were completely dead and charged to 100%, what's 12 times 14? 144 plus another 24. So 168. So $1.68.
Right.
It would cost me $1.68 to charge my car to 100%. And then, you know, I'll go the mileage I can. Basically, it costs me about a half a penny per mile to drive my car.
And a fast car too. Well, yours would.
Well, it's got 327 foot-pounds of torque.
I don't know what that means. I'm just nodding my head and be like, cool.
Okay. It's got more low-end grunt than a V6 Camaro built in 2020.
That was English.
So yeah, we'll put it that way.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, the electricity, and honestly, a lot of the chargers, the public chargers that are kind of the mid-range in terms of speed, like if you're going grocery shopping, you'd plug in while you're going shopping. Those are free most places. The fast chargers are comparable with what you'd pay for gasoline. So, yeah, that's super, super easy. But yeah, EVs are more responsive to the performance. Like it's more fun because you step on the accelerator and it gives you an immediate response. You don't have to wait for the car to decide what gear to be in and then accelerate the engine through the RPM range to get to that one sweet spot where you're making the horsepower you need to make. Just you punch it and it goes. It's awesome.
That's
I love
amazing.
it. I'll have to give you a ride sometime.
Dude, seriously, man, for real. I would love that. That sounds wonderful. Well, that's the thing. I feel like functionality, that's the name of the game for so many people, right? Like we do have to get to work on time. We do need to get to pick up the kids, right? And frankly, to have a vehicle that is reliable and functional, I mean, it's not that it's slow that matters. I'm not looking for a Corvette or a Mustang here, right? I'm just looking for reliability. Like, can it actually meet my needs? Whenever I think of an electric vehicle, I think of this little toaster oven that has wheels on it, right? And that's just what comes to my mind. I'm like, there's no space in this thing. Like, hey, I
Right.
got 2 kids, a dog, a couple friends. We just packed, a van that is made for these things. And
Sure.
all I think of whenever I even ponder the ideas of EVs is these things aren't functional. This thing can't possibly meet my needs for my stage of life, young family, young kids, all the crap in the world, plus the kitchen sink, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, what do you say to that, man? Because, like I said, toaster oven. That's what I'm thinking with wheels.
If you can't find what you're looking for with the current selection of EVs out there, you will likely be able to find it within the next couple of years. Unfortunately, the major manufacturers, the legacy brands, if you will, are not making that transition because they don't care. They make their money on maintenance. They don't want to make EVs, because they will lose money. They're more expensive to make, and they're not going. I mean, I have spent money on tires over the last year. That's it.
Yeah,
over a year, and I've only spent like $400 on this car. So, it doesn't make sense for them to build the EVs that people want. And they say there's a demand problem that people don't want EVs. Well, that's not entirely true. It's just if you go to a dealership and say, hey, this is what I need a car for, this, I've got a family, we've got sports equipment, we need to get around, here's how far we drive. They're going to point you towards a gas-powered vehicle. When it comes to van, closest you can get is plug-in hybrid Chrysler Pacifica. Okay. But you can still get, 20, 30 miles of all-electric range and then switch over to gas for the longer trips, and it works.
Yeah. That's a great ride. That's, I mean, honestly, Zach, for even people that, would you say that EVs, do you think it's really practical and realistic that EVs will be the first-time car for like this generation that's coming up with all the technology that's at our fingertips? Do you think it's quite there yet in terms of affordability, practical ness? Do you think 16-year-olds will have access to something like this? Because like I said, I know adults that are dreaming of it.
Yes. My daughter's 12, and her first car will either be the Spark that I'm driving, or it'll be a Tesla Model 3.
Nice.
I would prefer the Tesla Model 3, even though it costs four times as much, because it's a lot safer.
Yeah.
Teslas specifically are the safest vehicles on the road. They get higher crash ratings than any other car. So I want my kids to be in the safest cars. But EVs are generally safer than gas-powered cars. One, because they actually, believe it or not, don't catch fire as much. They catch fire 8 times less than gas-powered cars do. But also, a lot of the EVs, the way they're designed, they have a lot more crumple room. You'll see a lot of electric vehicles, they pop open the hood and there's nothing there but more storage space. Right. And that's because the motors are kind of tucked underneath and the battery pack's underneath the car and it's all bolstered and strengthened and everything. So they're a lot safer. The way things are progressing, I think 5 years from now, we will see a lot more EVs out there. I think that actual transition will probably be about 10 years from now, where the majority of new cars sold will be electric. And then I think probably half the car on the road, it's going to take maybe 15 to 20 years before gas-powered cars are just not prevalent. The one thing that'll change that is public policy. There are a lot of cities in Europe that are actually starting to ban or put in place plans to ban gas-powered or diesel-powered cars, in 2030, 2035, 2040. So public policy might accelerate my own little timeline a little bit. Right. But it just depends. I mean, the U.S., we tend to lag behind the world when it comes to
smart
policy decisions, which that's a whole other conversation.
That's another podcast, folks. Well, that'll be on for another day. Yeah, but there's some truth to it, because there is a reality that, I mean, you can go to Europe and see that there is a more prevalent.
Yeah, when it comes to electric vehicles, I mean, they have so many more different models that they can choose from, different options. I mean, that China is actually the #1 leading market in the world for EVs, but Europe is closely behind them. And it's kind of neat because we can look at what's going on in those markets and almost see our future in many ways. The things that they're doing now will most likely be what we're doing in 5 years.
Wow. Interesting. What do you think is the biggest setbacks that are really kind of from a user standpoint, holding people, that you see generally hold people back from making the transition of, I have a gas vehicle, now I'm going to make the change over to electric? What's another kind of thing that you, generally speaking, see really holding people back?
Extremely generic. It's only two things: ignorance and fear. And that is really what I find I'm trying to combat more than anything else. People, one, they just don't know about electric cars, or what they do know is wrong. But then people tend to generally fear change. When it comes to a new technology, what I find is most people think an electric car is this crazy different experience, and it really isn't. I just did a review on the Nissan Leaf for the EV Resource magazine for July. And honestly, my biggest complaint is it wasn't enough of the EV experience that I like. It was just a normal car. Like, you get in and you drive, and it was like, okay, there wasn't anything special about it. While that might be bad for a person like me that's just immersed in this world, for the majority of people out there, that's probably a good thing. Because you just want to get in and drive. You don't care about what's under the hood. Most people don't think about cam timing or valve clearances or any of that. They just, hey, when I turn the key or push the start button, I just want it to work.
Right.
And EVs do that better than anything else.
Dang. Zach, I mean, and honestly, with all this, like this fear and this ignorance, man, tell us about you. Tell us about what you're doing with EV Resource. Like, man, I wanted people to use you as friends. This is why I have these conversations. I want to connect you with folks that can give you the information that you need, the honest information that you need, not what they want you to hear, but just what is the facts, and honestly, how they can bring solutions to the problems that you're facing. So, Zach, like, when it comes to the electric vehicle world, what are you doing now, man, to really help change the conversation from the consumer side? Because you don't work for these EV guys. No. You're solo. You're independent.
Brand agnostic.
Yes, it's perfect.
Honestly, like, I don't care what people drive. I just want people to be driving more electric vehicles. And this actually circles right back around to the first question that you asked, which was the purpose. The big purpose for us, the larger public, it really comes down to safety, cost, and honestly, air quality. Where, diesel school buses, they've done studies. The kids on buses are exposed to more diesel gas in the bus than people outside the bus. The air quality issue, and that's something that people have been looking at a lot more with the coronavirus outbreak and all of the mess that we've had with that being a respiratory issue.
Yeah,
people are starting to look at air quality. They're realizing that when we had the shutdowns and air quality was dramatically increased because people weren't driving around, that you could breathe better. That is a huge issue. That honestly is the #1 issue that in mass, everybody should be driving more electric vehicles. It's a huge, huge health benefit that they actually did a study that anybody that buys an electric car, it adds $10,000 of value over the life of that vehicle to everybody else, not to the owner of that car. It's to everybody else, to the public, in how it, every other way.
Yeah.
So That's why people should drive electric vehicles. What I want to do really is to accelerate the process. I want that transition to happen sooner. That is really my why. That's what I believe in. Now, how I'm doing that is through stuff like this, talking to more people, getting more people to be aware, or even if I can get somebody to go from that, I don't like it, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to think about it, to, okay, maybe I will. I'm happy with a maybe. But yeah, I would say if you're not an EV person, have a conversation, ask questions, figure out what is it that you want to learn, what do you want to know, and throw it at me. I literally named EV Resource because I want to be an EV resource.
Mm-hmm. And you clearly, the passion is very real, even in our conversations. I'm sure, friends, as you're hearing Zach share, I can tell you it's real because I've talked with him one-on-one, and I've heard other people connect with him, and the passion and the wisdom that he shares is so sincere and caring. And honestly, whenever this guy says that he doesn't care about what you end up buying, it's just having the conversation that you're not yet having. He really does mean it. And it's only made me more open to, I think, well, I've always been open to the idea of having an EV. It's more of just the when the timing happens kind of question for me personally, but having the confidence that it actually is a good idea. It's not just, whenever I reach X amount of dollars, it's actually like, hey, how can I take care of the world to be better than whenever I was here, so that I can pass it on to my kids in a way that is more meaningful and healthier for them. And yeah, it is cars, but it's also the resources that we have around us and how we use them matters. And so that's why it's so important to connect with people like Zach, and many others who I'm sure he would gladly connect you to answer these questions, So, yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I don't know the answer to something, I probably at this point know somebody who does.
Mm-hmm.
It's not often that I get stumped anymore, but man, I'd love the challenge. Throw it at me. That's great.
These conversations, folks, are for you all. They really are. They're to be a blessing, to show you all what is available, both personally, professionally, hard, easy subjects. I mean, this is why we're here. Let's do this together. Let's connect with one another. If there's anything that I can do for you all as you endeavor in your futures, whether it's personally or professionally in the coaching world, I would be honored to stand with you, because it's guys like Zach that I get to connect with and just have fun learning from, and being able to pass those lessons on to you all as students. And so, just appreciate you all. And I pray that you have a wonderful night, had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And until next time, thanks again, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Joe. So that will be all for this week's episode. I want to thank you all very much for watching. Before we go, I do want to announce a new Patreon subscriber, Ian L. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to bringing you the very best content that you guys can enjoy. And to that point, I'm really excited for next week. I hope you guys stay tuned for that, because I interviewed the current world record holder for the fastest EV motorcycle. So that is something that it'll be a little different next week as well. Bear with me. I'm not ignoring the news, but I really felt like this was some really cool stuff to bring you guys, and that you would enjoy it as well. So the next couple weeks, this week and next week, are going to be a little different, but we will get back to the latest EV news after that. If any of you do want to support EV Resource on Patreon, you can find us there, patreon.com/EV Resource. You can sign on subscriber level and get full access to, which is a once a month publication. At the producer level or executive producer level, then there are a few other perks that build on top of that as well. So check it out. It's completely voluntary. You don't have to, but any support that you guys would give is certainly appreciated. But that is going to be it. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.